everyone. Welcome to A Tour of Her Own's live salon today in partnership with District Fray. My name is Kaitlin Calogera. I'm the president of A Tour of Her Own, and I'm here with editor-in-chief of District Fray Magazine, Monica Alford. Hi, Monica.
Hi, Kaitlin. How are you?
Very good. I'm excited that you are joining us today. I'm also excited that we're joined by so many incredible women, badass women, some would say, right here in the DC area. All the women here today were featured in District Fray's Women's History Month edition as change makers. And so today we are moving those stories from paper into this video space. We are going into a dialogue and a conversation, and we want to know everything that we can about them. We want to celebrate each other today, and we want to share your stories with the rest of our community. So thank you, ladies, all for being here today. It's an honor and a pleasure. And thank you to all of our guests who are showing up as observers, who are interested in this, and who really just want to continue a sustainable culture in DC of small business and creators and women and feminism and all these wonderful ideas. So without me talking too much, let's get going here. And I'll just do a quick introduction about A Tour of Her Own, and then we'll learn a little bit about District Fray as well. So A Tour of Her Own is the first tourism company in Washington, DC to focus exclusively on women's history. So I'm a DC tour guide, and after years of talking about our presidents and lots of war memorials and sort of the same old stories, I really wanted to highlight women in history. We wanted to talk about the suffrage movement. We want to talk about women in government and women in the military. And so that's been our major goal. However, we work in the tourism industry. So when people come to us, they say, well, we want to take a tour. What are we going to do next? And it's part of our mission and our goal to say, well, go to this woman-owned restaurant, go to this woman-owned boutique, do your shopping, do your eating, do your DC culture within our sustainable system. So that's kind of how TOHO came to be. And that's why we are supporting these kinds of salons and these programs where we can engage with all of you. So I'll pass it on to Monica and talk a little bit about District Fray and how this partnership came to be.
Sure. So thank you all for being here today. It's really exciting to see people's faces who we featured in the magazine recently. Obviously, during a COVID year, it's been hard to see our interviewees in person. So this is really lovely. Thank you for carving out time for this conversation. So District Fray is a lifestyle and entertainment magazine in the DC area. We were formerly On Tap magazine, and we relaunched last March, about 2 weeks before COVID. So really fun timing to rebrand and launch a new magazine. But it's been a really wonderful year because it gave us the opportunity to focus more on human interest and storytelling and really supporting the local community, going very hyper local and just, talking to people about how they're surviving, how they're pivoting, what kind of support they need, whether they're in hospitality or the arts or other industries. So I think it's actually been a really great way to grow our readership and our Fray magazine family that we're really proud of. And so with our March issue, when we put out our first Fray issue as District Fray Magazine last March, we obviously wanted to celebrate Women's History Month, and we did a big roundup of female powerhouses in the city, and it was so well received that we definitely wanted to bring it back this year. And obviously there's no shortage of amazing women in the city doing interesting things, but we worked really hard to build a list of 30 women that were representative of different industries. And we also relied very heavily on our magazine family. So, writers and photographers and former interviewees and just friends of the mag who recommended some of their favorite women in the city. So many of you actually were recommended by people that I reached out to and just said, who are the most badass ladies that you know? And everybody made this list. So we knew that we were picking people that were authentic and genuine and doing a lot of wonderful work in the community. So yeah, we're very proud of that. And I also, just so everybody knows, I dropped a link to the hard copy, the clickable PDF of the article that you can flip through into the chat, as well as the digital article, if anybody wants to peruse it.
That's so wonderful. I love this idea of where you were getting recommendations, because I feel like so much of the work that we do with TOHO is word of mouth, and it's sort of working within our circles and in our trusted communities to move forward and build relationships and networks. So I don't know if that's uniquely DC, uniquely women forward or what, but I find that very relatable, and I'd be interested if other folks in the group had that same experience in how they operate. But let's go ahead and do some introductions. Monica, how about you pass it off to our first guest?
Let's start with Lindsay.
Hi, everyone. My name's Lindsay. Also, just double checking there's not another Lindsay in the room. My name's Lindsay. I am the founder of Studio Made Architecture and Design. We're a small architecture office working on everything built environment, everything design. I would say maybe half our work is residential and half is everything else, from music building to working with another women-led great organization called Story District on their events and office space. So all sorts of different types of spaces, different scales. And we love to work directly with people who want to celebrate where they are, where they work, where they live, where they eat, where they play and learn. So thanks for hosting TOHO and District Fray. This kind of thing is just the thing I needed this week, and I'm so glad to be here and learn from all the other speakers.
That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing. We try to be a place at TOHO where you can sort of escape from your everyday and be like an outlet for whatever it is you need that week. Storytelling, enthusiasm, community, history. So that's a good point. Thanks for sharing. Go ahead. Let's pass it on to our next guest.
And I pass it, right?
Yep.
Lila.
All right. Hey, everyone. So happy to be here. My name is Lila, and I am the co-founder of districtlylocal.com. I'm a DC native, one of the few remaining, it seems, that have kind of lived abroad and a bit all over in the country. But I'm joined here by my co-founder, Miranda Magala. We started Districtly Local in August of last year. We've been friends for a while, but when the pandemic hit, we really wanted to do something to support our local businesses and small brands. So Miranda and I actually already had a spreadsheet that we just kind of used for the two of us to keep track of all of our local favorite brands, and really wanted to extend that to the community. So we transformed the spreadsheet into a website and a directory that has filters for women-owned, Black-owned, POC-owned, and LGBTQ-owned. And it's been an amazing journey. We started with about 140 brands, and we're close to 500 now from submissions from the community. And yeah, thank you. And brand owners reaching out, and of course, so grateful for this opportunity to be chatting with these wonderful ladies, and very excited to be here again. And I will popcorn to my wonderful co-founder, Mariana.
Hi, everyone. My name is Miranda Magala, and as Lila said, we're longtime friends. We knew each other from college, and then we launched districtlylocal.com together. It started as a directory from our spreadsheet to a directory, but I'm also excited to add to the overview is we also spread to doing resources for brands. So if you go to districtlylocal.com now, you can see there are grants, pop-ups, opportunities to get into different stores as well. So that was then it kind of shifted added to our focus just to make sure we were supporting the brands in every way we could. And then let me pass it off to Sarah.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. I'm Sarah Quintero Schilling. I am the co-owner of Schilling Canning Company. It's a local restaurant in DC's Navy Yard. My husband and I opened this business actually about maybe 8 months before everything shut down pandemic-wise. So it was, as you can imagine, it's been quite a year and a half for us to keep going. But, we've learned a lot. We've been flexible, and, we're excited to be in DC because we think the DC community and especially Navy Yard, where we are located, we've gotten a lot of community support, and I think that's been one of the biggest things for us. So I actually wear 2 hats during the day. I also a pediatric dietitian. So I work for a hospital, and I do treat pediatric children. So that's my day job, and my night job is to be at the restaurant and run the restaurant with my husband. So it's quite a full-time job, and we have a daughter as well, and one on the way. So it's been quite a year for us, but we're excited, and I'm happy to be part of this amazing group. So I'll pass it on to Jojo.
Amazing, thank you. I'm Jojo Ruth. I'm the managing director of Theater J. We're like a $2 million theater located in DuPont Circle. We're within the Jewish Community Center. And all of the work that we do is sort of through the Jewish lens. So it's stories written by and about Jews, but I myself am not Jewish, so it's very inclusive of everybody. We just happen to be inside the Jewish Community Center there. I have sort of worked my whole career within the theater community in DC. Lila, I'm actually also a DC native, so rare to find two of us in one space. And so the DC theater community has grown immensely over the past few decades. We now have more than 90 professional theater companies in the area, and it's becoming a real sort of destination, whereas people used to think about New York when they think about theater. DC is starting to be an exciting destination for that as well. And sort of what I do within the theater is I co-run it with an artistic director who's in charge of sort of all of the art and programming, and I'm in charge of all of the finances, fundraising, marketing, patron experience. So we're sort of a financial business hat for most of my days. And very excited to be here and be part of the conversation. So thanks for making it happen. And I'll pass it to Victoria.
Hi, thanks, Jojo. Theater J for Jojo. Well, first of all, hey, ladies. It's good to see all your faces. Really happy to see one of my board members, Carol Fell, just joined us. Thanks, Carol. So I'm Victoria Reece. I'm the co-founder of Transformer, which is a nonprofit visual arts organization that has been located in the Logan Circle area at 14th and P Street Northwest since 2002. We're coming up on our 20-year anniversary in 2022, which is really exciting. I've been Transformer's executive and artistic director since 2006. And our mission is to connect and promote emerging visual artists. We do that through multiple platforms, both on the local DC level, nationally, and internationally. And it's been really a pleasure for an honor for all of these years to be able to create so many different innovative platforms to help propel and advance all different emerging visual artists working in all different visual mediums in their artistic career trajectories, focusing heavily on women artists, BIPOC artists, queer artists, has been a part of our mission since the jump. And we're just really so grateful that we survived through the last 18 months with a really strong board of directors of some very powerful ladies, and had the great support of District Fray, also in highlighting our work, and just really happy to be here and meet everyone and hear about everyone's stories. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for joining us. I think we have just one more speaker, if I'm right here, Mary Johns from
Mary. Sorry, passing the baton to Mary.
Thank you. I'm Mary, and I'm the founder of Open Kitchen DC, and we publicly launched in January before the pandemic. So we've had a number of pivots, but really my mission is to showcase the amazing immigrants and immigrant food we have in the DC area. And so I create boutique events that go all around the DC area to some of the best immigrant-owned restaurants, and invite those owners to share their personal story, share their culture, and then share their food with our guests for about a 2-hour really intimate experience where the attendees get to engage really personally with the owners. And it's just been a really rewarding experience. During the pandemic, we've been delivering meals to healthcare workers, being able to pay immigrant-owned restaurants to do that. By partnering with different nonprofits, we've delivered meals to the National Guard protecting the Capitol. We've done a couple of socially distant events. We've done all kinds of things. So right now during the summer, we're just doing a couple of private events. And then hopefully in the fall, we'll be back to like events that anybody can attend. And I just love what I do because I love people and I love food and I love travel and culture. And this kind of is a unique compilation of all my interests and experiences.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories with us. Part of why I wanted to do this with TOHO was because I was flipping through the magazine and I was like, I feel bad that I don't even know of some of your businesses and the work that you do. And so, I felt like there's always more of an opportunity to connect and learn more about each other. And just hearing you all do this introduction was very enlightening for me. So thank you for that. Hopefully others feel the same way. Just as you were all talking, I was jotting down some like keywords just to sort of think like, wow, look at all these interesting things that we're doing. And I want to share some of those words with you. We have people representing the theater industry, the medical industry. We have moms in the group. We have people that love spreadsheets, which is a thing, and wonderful how that could blossom into a business. Lots of intersectionality, immigration, visual arts are being represented. We have anniversaries coming up. This idea of mutual aid and sharing and taking care of our communities. It's really beautiful. And I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate everyone for being here today after what has been a very challenging year. So kudos to all of you. This is a good segue into our mantras. Like, who are we? If you had to sum yourself up into just a sentence or two, it's, another challenge, but something that I think can offer us all some positivity and hope moving forward. So let's go over each other's mantras and talk about that. Monica, take it away.
All right, so I will read everybody's individual mantra, and then the question that we are asking each of you to answer after I read it is the origin behind your mantra, and how has being a part of the DC community help support your mantra? So kind of a two-parter, and I can repeat that at any point in time if you guys want, but I figured I would only say it once at the beginning. Let's start with Leela. So her mantra when we wrote the article was rely on your intuition in moments of doubt. Deep down, you always know what's best for you or not serving you well. So can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things that has been applicable at all stages of my life, really. I've been in tech for a while, and, Districtly Local kind of forced me to sharpen some skills that are outside of my day-to-day job, I would say. And there were times where you just get a little, that just moment of imposter syndrome or just doubting everything and saying, okay, well, is this really what I should be focusing on? And, sometimes Miranda and I will have some brainstorming sessions where we just have to take a step back and say, okay, if this doesn't intuitively feel right, like, let's just not pursue that. Sometimes, we're both pretty quant heavy people, but sometimes you need to take another aspect to just the numbers or the data, I would say, to make your decisions. I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel very strongly about just trusting intuition. And I feel like thus far it's served us well. Even I'd say with the birth of districtlylocal.com, Miranda and I both had like a million ideas of ways we wanted to take it, but just ultimately had to say, okay, what are kind of the core features that we want the website to have? Like, we want it to be searchable. We want to have keyword search. We want to have categories. The filters, of course, for ownership are the most important things. And just saying, okay, well, even though we may feel there's so much more we could do, like this just feels great, and let us pursue this because it's what feels right. And I'd say on the community aspect, as I had mentioned, DC has been amazing in terms of embracing, not only kind of the work that we've put into it, but also a lot of our focus with Districtly Local is through social features. And so promoting, brand owners who make a variety of products. And so through that aspect, I think it's just always nice to have that sort of validation of like, yes, when you trust your gut and you see the community reflect that level of enthusiasm, then I don't know, it's just rewarding in that regard. It's like, okay, well, I said I was going to do this because this is what my gut told me. And then the community is embracing it and empowering us to do so. So.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to Mary. Mary's mantra is love your neighbor as yourself, which is hard to actually live out and requires daily conscious choices. Take it away, Mary.
Okay, so that is the scripture verse, and my business is motivated by my faith because I believe that all life has value, and I want to honor and respect those that may be completely different than me. And so I think that, I have 3 kids, so I'm always trying to teach them to put others first and to care for others and to listen to others. So I think, truly putting myself second or treating others the way that I want to be treated is something, like I said, harder to do, but, elevating their voices, listening to their stories, and honoring them for who they are and what they've experienced is just part of my life and something I'm trying to pass on through my events and to my family through as a mother.
Wonderful, thank you. Mariana, always maintain your integrity regardless of your goal.
So this one was actually inspired by my dad. It was something he would always tell me. And so I was like, it applies to many assets of your life, whether it's your business or projects you're working on or anything else. So I've lived by it in everything that I do. And I think it's a good one. It's an easy one to follow if you think about it. It's very direct. Just follow your integrity. But it allows you to be proud of your actions and achievements, regardless of what the decision was, what the result was. You can always be proud of what you did. And I think in terms of the community, it's been great to see that no one's told me directly, but a lot of brands and individuals we work with embody this mantra as well. And I see it in what they do. And so I'll tell you, like with the brands we've connected through with Districtly Local, they're even during this hard time with the pandemic, they were always looking for ways, how could they do more? How can they give back? Can they donate all proceeds from an item, and getting our advice on it, how to position it? We've also seen brands work together during this hard time. If someone got their product into store X, they would help someone else get their product into that store. And then obviously we've also seen it in the community here in DC. People aren't just, following us and saying they like local, they actually are making an effort to purchase locally. We've had individuals reach out to us and say, hey, is there a local replacement for this? Where can I find it? So living up to kind of what they believe in. So we've seen it all around, from the brands to the individuals.
That's great, thank you. Excuse me, Lindsay, dare mighty things. This one might be my favorite.
So this is totally cribbed from the NASA lander, Mars lander, that was happening around the time that I had to submit my mantra. But I think it was just a short way to sum up a lot of feelings I have about being entrepreneurial, being a women-owned business, and making things happen. And I think the word dare is appropriate because it has thrill and risk, and it has joy and anxiety. And I think those things fuel a lot of leadership, a lot of change, hard work, and what we all do all the time, which is making things happen and bringing people together in virtual space, in real space, all different types of communities through different filters. And it kind of, I think, relates to, or is specific to DC, in that I don't think I could be personally doing the things I'm doing or have the business I have in other places. I think DC was a perfect environment to start a creative business, to get to know other people, and build a team around this idea. So I'm really grateful to be in DC and to have the opportunity to dare.
Thank you. Okay, Victoria, keep on keeping on.
Yeah, it's a little cliche, but it was definitely something for me throughout the last year plus about having hope and just keeping my mission for Transformer as the focal point of everything that I was doing, and to just keep moving forward, keep going. There are many, many challenges, hurdles, but the stories that I was hearing from artists and from the community about how much they were valuing our pivot into online programs, really pushing forward in continuing to support artists. In fact, supporting more artists with financial support in 2020 than we had even the year prior through honoraria and different programming that we were coming up with, but just to keep going, don't give up. I think I also was listening to the MC Light song at the time when you were asked me to participate in the article. So Keep On Keeping On was, oh yeah, that's right where I'm at, MC Light, thank you. Of course, you know, it dates back to Bible verse and the famous Bob Dylan song, but for me, it's just about like, just don't give up, keep going, keep on keeping on, keep moving, keep it going.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's see, Jojo, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
Yeah, so this is also totally stolen from Mary Oliver, the poet, who died at this point a year or more ago. And to my mind, this like we have one chance to be on this world and to sort of do what we want and to really just take it. You know, be sort of wild and also not too precious about things. So I think about this constantly. I also think there's, you know, I feel very fortunate to be within the arts world in DC. I can certainly only speak to theater, but it's an incredibly like generous, collaborative city. I think more so than almost any city I know of in the US. And the idea of taking risks and throwing things at the wall and trying things out is really sort of encouraged in DC. And to be a little wild with your one life is it's a good place to do that.
I couldn't agree more with that. And Sarah, last but not least, work hard, have a positive attitude, and don't give up.
Yes. You know, I think this definitely comes from like the year we spent opening the restaurant and having to face with COVID. It's just been so challenging. And, you know, being young entrepreneurs and a husband and wife duo, you know, when everything shut down, it was kind of like that deer in headlights moment where we're like, oh boy, like, what are we going to do? And, you know, I think there's so many things. It's being staying positive that you're going to make it. And really just it's really is hard work, especially in the restaurant industry, and you know, all industries are hard work, especially if you're an entrepreneur, but restaurants are especially challenging, like the long hours, the long weekends. I think being a mom and having another job was especially challenging to try to support the family, but it's you know, it kept me going, and it was a busy year, but we've survived. And I think that at the end of the day, if you put in the time, you're always going to be there. There has to be some reward to all the time you put in, and I think positively. And I do have to say, I do agree with Lila. I always do go with my intuition. That's something I've spoken about for so many years. I said there's something about the women's intuition that you know, your gut feeling. Go with your gut feeling, because I feel like mine is right most of the time, and it's I think, you know, sometimes you know deep down inside what's going on. So that's kind of where that comes from.
Thank you. So Kaitlin, do I get to share yours from the article?
Sure, I'm unprepared, but yes.
Well, I wrote it down just in case. So Kaitlin was also featured in our roundup, and her mantra was, where there is a problem, there's often a solution that can be manifested with creativity, optimism, and discipline.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in finding solutions. I think we have this limited period of time where we get to be upset, angry, or distraught over a problem before we have to pivot and start finding ways to solve it and move forward. I think that's something I try to do in my personal life, but it certainly drives me as an entrepreneur. And I think optimism and creativity are tied in with that. You know, if you just pause for a second, take a breath, and really think of everything that's possible, you can find ways to get to where you want to. And I think Washington, DC particularly has a lot of opportunity. When I moved here, I was only expecting to be here for a short period of time, but I kept having more and more opportunity. I kept connecting more and more with people around me. And so that fed into my optimism and creativity. And then as far as discipline, I think we all in this room know it's not easy. And some of the things I took away from your mantras was this idea of a process, right? It's discipline, it's to go through the process, it's to dig in and really stay committed for the long term and keep that in mind so that you can get over the hurdles. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Monica. And it's really special to me where everyone has gotten inspiration from. I think it shows us that the path to ownership comes in many different forms. We talked about scripture and faith and poetry and science and Teddy Roosevelt, words like dare and risk and opportunity. And I think that that's really special. So thank you for sharing your mantras with us. I guess we'll move on to our next question. Which historical site in Washington, D.C. or the DMV is your favorite, or do you spend a lot of time there? Or you feel a special connection to? We'll do popcorn with this as well, and I'll pass it off to my friend Mary Johns.
Okay, mine's perhaps a little cheesy and not based on history, but I love the Washington Monument because when I first moved to DC in 2001, I lived in Crystal City. It was right after 9/11. And every time I would come, I grew up in Richmond, so I would visit my family, drive up 395 and peek over and look down on the city below. And there was the Washington Monument, and it's like, now 20 years later, this is home, and that monument just beckons me home. And now I live down the GW Parkway, and so my kids and I drive in the minivan down, and we see the Washington Monument, and it just makes me proud to live here. It I love that our city was thoughtfully designed in a way that stands out and up above the rest, and it's just a real distinction of living in this area. So I love it. So I'll send it over to Lindsay.
I think my favorite spaces in the city, and maybe first it'd be good to know a definition of historic or historical. What makes something meaningful in history, what makes a place special or monumental. But I think the places I spend the most time are probably the spaces in between other monuments or in between other nodes. So one of my favorite things to do is walk around the city and get to know different neighborhoods. So whether it's walking between DuPont and Shaw or the mall and Rock Creek Park, I love the spaces in between that connect us, that are where life really plays out. So I think the nodes and the monuments are wonderful and beautiful places to be, but I spend more of my time moving between them. So I think that's probably my favorite. And I will popcorn to Sarah.
Thank you. One of my favorite places is actually, I don't know how to describe it, but it's a little lake in between the Washington Monument and the memorial, the Lincoln Memorial. It's just so peaceful. It's just a beautiful site. I think there's not a lot of people that are always in that area. So it's kind of like a quiet place to go walk around, and you get to really see the sights. And I think the view from that lake to the Washington Monument is just so beautiful. So I think that's definitely one of my favorite places. And I think the Washington Monument has also grown on me since my 2-year-old is obsessed with it nowadays. So every time we drive by, she's like, that's the Washington Monument. So it's become a special spot for us to go and hang out and walk around. And I think on days when there's a lot going on, it's a good space to go just kind of decompress and, just get some air as well. So that's definitely a good spot. I'll pass it on to Lila.
Thank you. So I'd have to say my favorite spot, and yeah, I guess the gardens themselves are historical as well, but Dumbarton House in Georgetown, I would say last year, it just was so helpful for my mental health. Because where I live, there's a park nearby that, I thought was a hidden gem during COVID, not so much a hidden gem. And, if you're not there at that park by 11 a.m., like forget it. There's no bench you can sit on, even the grounds would just be popping. And so I'm grateful. I think Google Maps accidentally marked it as closed when it wasn't. So going to read in the garden, Dumbarton House, was just such a lifesaver last year for me. And just beautiful gardens. The house itself, I believe, was the house of Joseph Nurse, who was the first registrar of the Treasury, and now it houses some historical society, the name of which is eluding me. But yeah, it's just a beautiful space. And yeah, Kaitlin, maybe you probably know since you're history buff, but yes.
I'll do the nerdy historical thing here. Dumbarton House is a wonderful partner. It's the headquarters for the National Society of the Colonial Dames of America. Yes. So sort of like a women's lineage organization. But the Dumbarton House does very progressive events. They do yoga and trivia and all these wonderful programs. So that's a great place. I agree with you.
Yeah. And now, obviously Miranda and I feel very, very strongly about supporting our local makers, and they've been doing some pop-ups as well. So yeah, plug for them on that front as well. And I will popcorn to Jojo.
Great. So mine is not quite a historical space, but I'm going to go with it anyways, which is Haynes Point. Down by the waterfront. It's sort of similar to Lila, has been an escape for me during the pandemic. They closed off some of the roads and I would sort of ride bikes down there, but it's sort of, to me, it feels like this weird in-between place in DC where you see planes flying into National, you can sort of see the waterfront and you can witness all the crowds of DC, but it tends to be pretty quiet, at least early in the mornings. And just sort of reminds me of the beauty of the city, which is there's so much going on and you can very easily get down to the White House or the mall, but that there's still these stunning green spaces amidst the concrete buildings. And I will pass it to Victoria, who I don't think has gone yet. Pass it to you again.
Okay, thanks, Jojo. It's really hard to narrow it down to one. I moved to DC in 1991 as an intern, and I actually I moved out of DC to my home state of New Jersey in 2017. Yeah, living at the Jersey Shore and commuting to DC since my move. So up until the pandemic, I had been in DC just about every other week. And I had my first trip back post, since getting vaccinated in early March. I'm a week late, I got the Johnson & Johnson shot, and the week later was in DC. I've got to get back. I need to see and be inside Transformer and see my people. And one of the first places that I went that had always been, a spot for me was Dumbarton Oaks Park. But for me, what I really love is the Dumbarton Oaks Parks Conservancy that is in between. It's it's a road that looks like it's a chained off, don't go down here road. But if you walk down it, it opens up into a path, and it's just an incredible hidden, it feels like a hidden space. It's actually behind the Dumbarton Oaks estate. And it was designed by America's first female garden architect, landscape architect, Beatrix Ferrand. And the garden follies in there, and the way that it's been structured so that there are actual art pieces naturally built into the whole trail system, water structures that make musical notes, is just always super inspiring to me. So that is a historical, incredible landmark for me. But I have another. and I can't wait to get back to it now that DC is opening up, is the Black Cat, which for me has been, a huge part of my life in DC, really starting with Dante Ferrando and Dante's, which used to be where the Mitchell Gold Bob Williams is. Actually, that might be gone now, but it was right on 14th and Church Street. It started as Dante's, and then the Black Cat opened in 2001. And is that right? Yeah, 2001. I think it was just around 9/11 that that was opening. And that has been a hugely formative landmark for me in Washington. I met my husband there. My whole social scene was centered around the Black Cat. And I cannot wait to get back to seeing live music, and encourage everybody to keep pushing vaccinations so that all people in the music industry can really be getting back to work. So those are two for me. And I will, hasn't gone yet? Kaitlin, how about you?
All right. Oh, this is such a difficult question. And every time somebody brought a site up, I was like, oh yeah, I like that place too. Oh yeah, I love that place. Oh, I would have said that. So it led me sort of to three, and then I'll narrow it down. I love the Library of Congress. I love the building itself, particularly on the inside. It's beautiful and sort of hidden. And I also love the fact that our 14th Librarian of Congress, Dr. Carla Hayden, is our first woman to serve in the position. She's the first librarian. She's the first person of color as well. So it's just a really special site I like to talk about. But I also love Hillwood Estate, which is close to my house up in Petworth. It's I call it the Lost Smithsonian because it was supposed to be part of the Smithsonian and then ended up being a private institute. Now it has lots of gardens and beautiful mansion, and it was the property of Marjorie Merriweather Post, a CEO, a businesswoman, someone who really left her mark on the world. And the third place is National Cathedral. This is, I think, Lila, to your point, I always loved the cathedral. I'm a certified tour guide there. I love its sort of traditionalism, but also its progressive mission. And during the pandemic, I would really go and sit out there on the lawn in the Bishop's Garden. And I felt like it was very peaceful, and it had sort of a very spiritual vibe that I enjoyed at the time. So DC has such wonderful places. Just to go over some of the places you all said was Washington Monument. Sarah, the place you were talking about is called Constitution Gardens, in between the memorials there. Dumbarton House and Dumbarton Oaks. Haynes Point, I also think is wonderful. So all good points for sure. Monica, do you have a favorite site?
I also had trouble narrowing it down because I grew up in the area. So I have the ones from childhood and the ones since I've been back here for, well over a decade, and also have a young one who's obsessed with the National Monument. It's the Washington Monument. He calls it the National Monument and the Washington Mall. He gets them mixed up. It's very cute. So if I had to narrow it down, Dumbarton is definitely one of my favorite places, and like my heart pitter patters talking about the Black Cat. But I would say Roosevelt Island is one of my favorites. That's one of my favorite places to walk my pup and go with my son. And there's also a really nice trail run if you park there and go left towards Potomac Heritage Trail. It's a really lovely single file trail that goes all the way up to Great Falls. So it's really nice if you want to be away from other humans. And there's waterfalls and stuff, so it's pretty. I love the Watergate steps. I just feel like that's a very iconic view of the city. And I rowed in high school and post-college, so I love watching rowers anywhere on the Potomac, and that's one place you can catch a lot of people rowing. And then the Kennedy Center, the institution itself. And speaking to what Jojo was saying earlier, music and arts and culture in general, very passionate about that. But how I got into this role in particular 5.5 years ago as editor was because I was writing about theater as a freelancer for On Tap and making theater accessible to younger audiences and showing people that it's not for older, wealthier people, it's for everyone of all ages. It should be accessible, and how much it's changed and how much that scene has grown. And even though the Kennedy Center is one of the bigger, obviously, institutions that still is just iconic to me. Like I got to go there for the honors press conference a few weeks ago, and I was literally crying. I was like so happy to be back there after a year of not being able to see live performances. So yeah, those are mine.
Awesome. So beautiful, so inspirational. I'm going to leave my house and go visit all these places after this. We're moving towards the end of the program, so we have one more question. I also want to take this time to invite anyone that might be observing in the audience to contribute to the conversation at the end. So whether you want to share your favorite place in DC, your mantra, or you want to jump in and talk about a woman who has inspired you in history, I invite you to sort of add on at the end of this round. We want to, make sure that you're heard as well here. But that brings us to our last question. Which woman in history has inspired you? This is a loose question. It doesn't have to be a historical woman. It could be someone in your family. It could be multiple women. It could be sort of a movement. Whoever and whatever it is that you draw inspiration from, I'd love to hear about it. So I will pass it off to Lindsay May.
Oh my gosh, as I'm like running through all the women in history in my head, even though I was prepared. I don't know, I think I'm just overwhelmed now by the fortitude and endurance of women entrepreneurs. And I'm reminded by this conversation just how many there are. So maybe, I guess I'm inspired by women across history because we operate in a kind of contemporary system where we like to think we have, equality and agency, but that's certainly not been the case across history and across geography. So maybe my inspirational tribute will be just to women from history who have had it way harder than we have had and have had extreme circumstances, and the women around the world today who still face extreme circumstances. I'm inspired by them and their fortitude to lead inspiring lives, work hard, have careers and families, and despite it all. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, not to say that there aren't individuals, but I just feel kind of the weight of all the obstacles that women have had to deal with and around the world still deal with today.
Thank you for sharing that. I'll just jump in quickly. We often talk about women historically like this, sort of just general roles in society and how the smaller things impact their progress at the time or their challenges. Some of my tour guides really focus in on that. Some of our tours do focus more on the individual. So there are so many ways to really, I think, approach that question. Let's go over to Victoria, and then we'll popcorn. So just pass it around.
Okay, well, I just finished reading Madeline Miller's Circe, so I'm obsessed with Circe right now. And for me, she is just like everything, the most badass historical figure, and that I will be rereading the book soon because there was so much in there. But just the thinking broadly about the archetype of this woman who so independent, was exiled and had to completely create like this inner rich life for herself, and learned how to access her power, that power she didn't know that she had, and connecting with the natural world. And she was definitely a keep on keeping on kind of woman, didn't take any shit, and would turn men into pigs if they messed with her. So I don't know, that right now I literally just finished the book late last night and I'm just completely obsessed. So Circe is my historical figure. And I have the Odyssey sitting next to me, which is going to be my big summer read to get into the original Homer text. Yeah. Okay, and I will bounce it to Jojo.
Amazing, thanks. Circe's spectacular. What a great read. So my historical figure is slightly cliche, but is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I was thinking a lot about what you said too, Lindsay, that this idea of, her sort of one of her famous quotes that when will there be enough women on the Supreme Court when there are 9, her sort of constant fight for equal rights under the law. And one of the things I spoke about in my District Fray sort of quote was my deep-seated belief that every woman, really everybody, but particularly every woman should negotiate their salary. And I feel like Ruth Bader Ginsburg would support that wholeheartedly. Here's my quick plug to this group and anybody else who watches this, which is a Harvard Business Review a couple of years ago posted that 45 or 49% of men negotiate their salary and only 11% of women negotiate their salary, which results for your entire career of basically being behind men. So everybody should negotiate their salary. And I think, Ruth Bader Ginsburg reaching across the aisle, fighting for women's rights, but also sort of being collegiate and really friendly and a huge supporter of the arts is I'm a huge fan of hers. And Mariana, I don't think you did the last question either. So I'll throw it to you.
Thank you. I could tie them two together somewhat. So if anyone knows me, I'm from Ukraine. So anything Ukrainian, I'm very passionate about. So I'll answer both of the questions with a Ukrainian theme to it. When I first moved to DC, one of my favorite locations was the Shevchenko Monument near P Street in DuPont Circle. And the reason that was a big deal, he's very famous in Ukraine. He's a well-known bard, art author, activist, political activist to ensure that the Ukrainian language persisted even after Soviet rule. So very important figure, and stumbling upon it unexpectedly in DC was amazing because one, you're like, there's some Ukrainian monuments here, so felt at home. But two, it was awesome to see that in DC and the international spirit of it. He's not the only one in terms of an international figure that's showcased in DC because of driving for freedom in whichever country. And then two, for my figure of who inspires me, I would say Lina Kostenko, who is a famous Ukrainian poet and activist. She's very talented and smart, but also fearless. She published a lot of great work, went to school, graduated with 2 degrees in writing, but she knew that she wanted to advocate for other poets and help them. So she made that her passion, and she knew that it would hurt her and it would hurt her reputation. So she wasn't actually published for a long time, but she continued to write during her activism, and now all of her work is still being read. So I admire her for continuing her passion, but not being afraid to help others while she's doing that. And then I'll pass it off to Mary.
Thank you. I wanted to highlight 2 women that are making history in DC that I really admire. One of them is Chef Sang, who has started the Lao food movement and has numerous restaurants in the DC area. She didn't actually start her career as a chef until her 40s. And she is helping other people from Laos start restaurants up and down the East Coast, help advocate on behalf of Lao people. She's been really, she's partnered during the pandemic a lot with other East Asian, Southeast Asian restaurateurs, and just is a really neat voice and advocate for Asians and especially her little country. And her food is some of my favorite in all of DC. So if you haven't been to one of her restaurants, I highly recommend it. And then the other person I really think is doing a great job and is going to be really remembered in the DC food movement is Dina, founder of Fava Pot. And she started out with just a food truck. Food Network has named her food truck one of the top 20 in the nation. And she's now opening up her 3rd restaurant in DuPont Circle. And what I really admire about her is that she felt that there wasn't Egyptian food and culture represented well in the DC area. And so she left her career in fundraising to help introduce culture and history of Egypt to us through food. So her passions align a lot with mine about kind of merging food and culture and stories. And if you go into her restaurant in Falls Church, you'll see all over the walls wallpaper that has historical figures all over it, including an image of her mother. So it's very, very personal to her. And I just think she and Chef Sang are just extraordinary women that I look up to, and really think that they're helping define the DC food scene. And I'm going to have to hop off. I apologize. I've got to go do some family stuff. But Lindsay, did you already share?
Yeah, I said all women because everyone.
Who do we pass it on to? I can't even see.
Let's go to Sarah.
Sarah? Okay. Thank you all for the opportunity.
Thanks, Mary.
So I would have to say, recently, and actually this was part of the magazine, District Fray's, because we did this during Women's Month, I was reading The Widow Clicquot, and I just fell in love with her story. It's the story about the founder of Veuve Clicquot, Barb Nicole, and just reading everything that she had to go through, like historically, back like almost 200 plus years ago. She was a pioneer in really being a woman entrepreneur, running her own business. She not only helped her husband get the business moving, but then she had to take over the business when he passed away. And she is the reason what Veuve Clicquot is today. And I think she was also a mother, and she had to face so many challenges, including war and famine and things that we wouldn't imagine. And I think there were so many parallels with things that we were facing just, as a woman entrepreneur, as a co-owner of a business, where, I'm the only female with like 4 other male business owners, and then going through COVID. So it was just really inspiring to hear her story and to see how, she still persevered despite, and she's a stubborn woman, and this is how she kind of grew her empire. So it's a really, really neat story. And in most recently, I'm originally from Bolivia, and Bolivian Mother's Day is celebrated on May 27th. And it's because the women in Bolivia had to fight a war when the men couldn't do it anymore. There was like so much defeat, there was so much bloodshed, and the women were the ones that stood up and were actually able to fight and stand up for the country. And I find that story so amazing, and it just shows like the willpower that women have to be able to keep going and to be protectors, and to make sure that not only you're keeping your house safe, but you're moving forward and ensuring the security of everybody even when you can't. So I think that to me, that's very inspiring, and something that I celebrated recently as well, and love to share with the group as well. And I'll pass it on. Who has not gone? Leila, have you gone?
Yeah, and I'll be quick because I know we're at time. And Sarah, I love that you are Bolivian. I didn't know that. I actually grew up in Peru and Bolivia, so I love these random little connections that we're making through this discussion. Yeah, and my historical lady is Flora Tristan. She's a Peruvian French activist. She was one of the kind of early 19th century, one of the first women to come out and be very vocal about, I'd say, really abusive relationships and the role of society in kind of denigrating and oppressing women. So yeah, she has a bunch of kind of, exploits and just great writings. And so I won't do her justice in 30 seconds, but I would encourage you to research Flora Tristan and check her out. And I'll pass it back on to you, Kaitlin, to wrap us up.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, we are approaching the 3 o'clock hour. So I'm going to do a formal closing here. And then if anybody wants to stay on after, I'll hang around for a little bit more and we can continue the chat. That's for panelists and the audience as well. I want to acknowledge maybe just one woman as well, considering it is Pride Month and also with some current events in the past few days. I want to acknowledge Billie Jean King for being a trailblazer in sports through women's tennis, and for beating a man in a competition and getting lots of media and press around it. It was very brave and very important at that time, and still is. So, but that's certainly just one of many women I think that we can honor today and always. I also want to honor and thank all of you. You are, I'm inspired by you. You are role models in our community, you're leaders. And I think that we all have, a unique position and platform to continue shaping Washington, D.C., to continue shaping the United States of America. This is the nation's capital. I know that after this conversation today, I'm even more grateful to be a resident here, to have started a business here, and to have met each of you. So thank you for joining us. I also want to thank Monica for being a wonderful partner. We do lots of partnerships with A Tour for Own. And so if any of you are interested, I'm more than happy to have that conversation with you. It can be any which way that you want it to be, but District Fray has quite honestly been one of our best partners ever. Everyone on staff has been really open to communicate with us and just very professional. So Monica, thank you for that. Thank you for being a community organizer and pulling so many wonderful people into this room today. This is exactly what we have to do, right? The stories of women in the past are important, but our stories are important too. And we have to continue supporting each other. Monica, I'll give you the last word here.
Wow, so much pressure. Well, first of all, thank you so much. That was so kind of you. And honestly, these are the moments that I get most excited. This is why I love what I do. I love to be able to feature amazing people in the city and all of the incredible work that they're doing. And so many of the names shared, at least of the women that are not historical, but making history. So for example, Mary mentioned those two chefs. We featured them recently. I have a personal connection to one of them. DC is such a close-knit, wonderful community, and we're so supportive of one another, which many of us have said on this. So this just reinforces that even further. And Victoria actually asked me if I could connect everybody via email afterwards in case anybody wants to, collaborate, partner, grab a drink now that we can do that, whatever else. So I will be sure to do that. And I hope I get to see, many of you in person sometime soon. So thank you all for being here. And thank you, Kaitlin, for making it happen. You connected the whole group. So you had the big picture idea. So thank you for that.
Everyone have a safe week. Take care. Appreciate you all. I'm gonna go
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.